Well, global demand for a vaccine continues to grow, along with the number of confirmed infections around the world, now more than 23 million. The COVID-19 death toll passed 800,000 over the weekend, and surging cases across Europe continued to complicate travel plans for holidaymakers. France reported nearly 5,000 new cases from Saturday to Sunday, and the government has now announced plans to impose quarantine measures on all travellers returning from the UK. Well, for more on these developments, we can talk now to Professor Daniel Lopez Acuna. He's a former director for Health Action in Crisis at the World Health Organization. Well, thanks for joining us here on the programme. Well, the holiday season is winding down for many of us, but millions of students around the world and here in Europe, of course, are now returning to school or preparing to return to school. Are you expecting the virus to become more difficult to control when that happens?
What we are observing now in many countries in Europe is the result of the interactions that took place in the last 3-4 weeks, where there was no sufficient attention paid to the contact of people, not keeping the physical distance, engaging in mass gatherings or in groupings that facilitated the transmission, and we are paying the price now observing these cases. I think that if we make a concerted and coordinated move across Europe, where we do early diagnosis, appropriate tracing of the cases, testing and isolating the asymptomatic positive, we will be able to curb these spikes, but we need to put all the effort and we need to do it in a coordinated fashion.
Well, that coordinated fashion that you've just mentioned there has been sort of lacking from certainly here in Europe. The EU has wanted to take the lead on this, but do you think we could see a widespread lockdown measures reintroduced?
Well, if the community transmission gets out of control, we may have to go again into confinement and into the lockdown. I think everything we ought to be doing now is to do the necessary to avoid having to go into those draconian measures or extreme measures. But let's face it, when the community transmission is widespread, we do not have any other tool but reducing the mobility or doing the confinement. That's why we need to act very, very rapidly, and the European Union and Europe at large needs to have a much more concerted action for pursuing these objectives.
Okay. Well, you mentioned earlier this report coming out of Hong Kong of a patient who's been reinfected with COVID-19. Does that sort of, if it turns out to be true, does that mean that there's no chance that a single vaccine we could have a reliable one to deal with COVID?
Yeah, we need to really examine this very carefully to make sure that we are not dealing with false positive tests of PCRs or confusing possible reinfections, for ensuring that if it is indeed a reinfection, it's because the immunity has not lasted enough. Is it another strain that is not creating cross-immunity with the previous strain that generated the disease? All of this needs to be well established. But indeed, this poses issues and questions with respect to the efficacy of the vaccine. We need a vaccine that really protects for a long period of time, that it's effective, that creates the necessary immunity to protect, and it's not just an injection that is not going to be really operating properly. So I think these issues having to do with the duration and the nature of the immunity that is generated by the infection of the SARS-CoV-2 are extremely important, and we need to study them very carefully.
And in the meantime, that message must be repeated, of course, for people to take appropriate measures. Professor Daniel Lopez Acuna, former director for Health Action in Crisis at the World Health Organization, thank you.